When Memory Dies, Chapter 4 and Chapter 5. In Chapter 3, SW educates Sahadevan about Sri Lankan society, the impact of British colonialism on Sri Lanka, and the sectarian politics in Sri Lanka that was introduced by the Britishers. Chapter 4 begins by describing Tissa's love affair with a Tamil speaking Muslim girl called Sonoo. Tissa was someone who was often infatuated with someone or something. And in this chapter, we read about Tissa's infatuation for Sonoo. So he wants Sahadevan's help to talk to her. When Tissa talks about the Muslim girl Sonoo to Sahadevan, Sahadevan is reminded of Rani. Rani was a 16-year-old lower caste girl who used to help his mother in Sandlipay. Sahadevan had met her when he had gone back to his father's farm on Pandyan's request for Sahadevan's help in managing the farm. So he had spent around 2 years in Sandlipay working on the farm, and during this period he had fallen in love with Rani. And it was more like infatuation and lust blended together, and he had even kissed her and attempted to prolong their affair, but somebody came to know about it and Rani soon disappeared from his life. And Saha was very dejected. So when Tissa waxes eloquent about Sonoo's beauty and about his plans for the future with Sonoo, Saha is reminded of Rani and he feels a bit sad thinking about his lost romance. Tissa's father was in the timber business, and Tissa did not have any obligations to anyone. SW was his guardian, and SW was someone who encouraged his free spirits. He was quite liberal in his treatment of Tissa, and so Tissa could naturally fall in love, fall out of love, and that is what he did most of the time. Tissa and Saha finally meet Sonoo's grandmother. Sahadevan had been very hesitant to meet Sonoo or go to her house, which was in a lower class tenement area in Colombo, and because he was afraid of the consequences of this relationship between a Sinhala Buddhist boy and a Muslim Tamil girl. So he tried to make Tissa understand the consequences of such an attraction, of such an infatuation, but Tissa, as usual, was headlong in love with her and he was marching along. And so Saha decided to accompany him, because if he did not do that, then Tissa would probably stop speaking to him for a short duration and then get back on normal terms. But then Saha did not want to disappoint him, so Saha agrees to go with him. They go to Sonoo's house and they meet Sonoo's grandmother. And they are disappointed, Tissa especially, because he's not able to meet Sonoo. So on that Sunday, Tissa meets Mahmood, and under the pretext of being a member of the workers' union, he is actually a member of the Ceylon labor union, and Mahmood assumes that Tissa has come there to talk about labor affairs and labor problems, and Mahmood tells him about the long hours, the low wages, and the sheer indifference of the British employers. Saha is soon transferred to Veyangoda, and Tissa loses his job in the post office, and all this is unknown to Auntie Prema. Tissa has stopped coming to the Vijaypala house for quite some time, and Saha, when he comes down to Colombo, he decides that Tissa should meet Auntie Prema, who is very worried about him and deeply concerned about him. So he goes to Tissa's rooms and he meets Sultan. Sultan is Sonoo's 14-year-old brother who actually works in a cycle repair shop. And Sonoo has been employed by Tissa as a errands boy. Tissa has started working for Guna Sinha, who he addresses as chief, and Guna Sinha is the head of the Ceylon labor union. So Tissa does not get a proper salary and all, but he has been provided rooms above the office of the CLU, and he gets a pittance as wages for his other needs. Food is provided to him from Sonu's house, and Sultan is the one who brings the house. This is as per his own arrangement, Tissa's arrangement. Now, during this period, a 2 rupee tax was imposed on all adult Ceylonese males. And the Ceylon Labour Union is planning to protest against this, and they are inspired by the Civil Disobedience movement which was going on at that point of time in India under the leadership of Mahatma Gandhi. So Tissa always refers to Gunasinha as the chief, and Tissa says that he had participated in the strike against the 2 rupee tax, and because of his refusal to pay the tax, he had been given the punishment of 6 days hard labor working on hot Colombo roads, that is, laying the roads, which was a very tough and difficult job. And he keeps on talking about it, the difficulties, the heat, and the punishment that he had endured, and he wants Saha to join him. But then Saha reminds him that Tissa had worked on road construction only for 6 days, and that was part of punishment. But there were so many workers who were doing it on a daily basis for their daily survival. And Tissa is extremely sympathetic about regular road workers. He wants Saha to join. He even says that you are an admirer of Mahatma Gandhi, so why don't you join this movement against the 2 rupee tax? And Saha tells him that I have to go for my work. It's a government job, and if I lose my job, then I won't be able to support my family. So it's not possible for me to join the strike. And then Tissa and Saha, they keep talking about their life, their plans for the future. Both of them are 22 years old, and they talk about Para. Para is Saha's half-brother, and he has got employment as a night watchman at Capital Cinema. And he sleeps in a cubicle there. He is unhappy with his life, and he does not take any support from Sahadevan. So Saha is trying to help him get a better job. And Saha has meanwhile introduced Para to SW also, and both of them get along very well, SW and Para. And Sahadevan is slightly envious about the warmth of the relationship between SW and Para. Anyway, in Tissa's room, Saha and Tissa, they are talking about the labor problems, they are talking about Guna Sinha, they are talking about SW, they are talking about the upcoming strike, and Tissa invites Sahadevan to stay back and have Sultan's biryani. Saha loves biryani, so he stays back and he has the biryani, and he tries to convince Tissa that he should not get into trouble with Sonu. Meanwhile, Tissa tells Sahadevan that Sonu works in the bicycle repair shop. He is devoted to Tissa, and he also informs Sahadevan that his affair with Sonu is continuing, even though she was betrothed to her cousin who is in the copra business in Galley. With this, chapter 4 comes to an end. Moving on to chapter 5. After a long period, probably because of Saha's words, Tissa visits SW and Prema. And he behaves very stiffly with SW. Seeing this, Saha is saddened because once upon a time they had a very close bond with each other. Now, labor politics is driving them apart because SW does not trust Gunasinha. He does not like Gunasinha's brand of trade unionism. And Tissa is very deeply devoted to Gunasinha. So there is a distance between them. Para is also present for lunch, and after lunch, SW invites them to his shed at the end of the garden. Now, this was a structure that had always tickled Saha's curiosity. He had always wondered what was happening in that shed. Why did SW go there? So now when he is invited to that hallowed building, It's just a shed at the end of the garden. But in Saha's mind, it is something like a prayer room, a special place where SW goes and he keeps everyone out. So now SW is inviting them to that room. And Saha feels very privileged. So Saha, Para, Tissa go along with SW, and when the door is opened, Saha finds that the place is full of newspapers, pamphlets, magazines, journals, all these things. And he's also envious of Para's warm camaraderie with SW. So his curiosity is satisfied, and then he starts reading a couple of magazines. He picks up a magazine and he's reading, and certain queries come up, and he asks SW, and SW talks about Buddhist philosophy. And he says that prayer is understanding oneself. Then they talk about Dr. Lisboa Pinto. He was a Roman Catholic doctor from Goa who used to help the poor and needy, and he was very devoted to the poor people. He was selfless in his work. And he was the person who was responsible for setting up the Ceylon Workmen's Union in 1893. So the printer strike was the first strike that was organized by the Ceylon Workmen's Union. Although it was not very successful, it increased the representation of Ceylonese people in the Legislative Assembly. And then SW tells them about one of the workers called William, who had been audacious. He had walked up to his British employers and he had demanded wages while he was on strike. Then SW tells the young men about Podiappu and the Carter's strike. Podiappu was somebody who was a revolutionary in the sense that the carters were prevented from riding on their carts because it was felt that the carts would create obstruction for the trams running on the streets of Colombo. So the British government came up with a new law forbidding carters to sit in their carts and drive the carts. They were supposed to walk alongside the carts. So this man, Podiappu, he drove his carts through the streets of Colombo standing on it, and he couldn't be punished because he had not broken the law, but he had proved his point. Then SW tells them about Vadivel, who prevented caste differences from breaking the unity of strikers. So these were things that were used by the British to create differences between the people of Sri Lanka. The same policy that they followed in India. And then the conversation moves on to Gunasinha, and SW says that he does not trust Gunasinha. He disagrees with his call for a strike at that particular point of time. So they were talking about a general strike which Gunasinha was planning to announce soon, and Saha informs him that the strike will happen anyway. So while this conversation is going on in the shed, most of Saha's education continues here, and immediately after that what happens is SW says that probably they should go to sleep now, it's quite late, and the conversation comes to an end. A few days later, the general strike is announced, and SW is unaware of it. So Saha comes back home and he informs him that even rail workers have joined the strike. But SW had been unaware of it, and he feels let down. He feels very disappointed that he himself, a leader of the railway workers, had not come to know about the strike. So after the call for the strike, SW and Tissa, they drift further apart. And seeing this distance that is cropping up between SW and Tissa, both Saha and Para are worried. So one day Saha confronts Tissa about this distance, about this estrangement. And Tissa tries to convince him about Gunasinha's brand of politics. Meanwhile, back home, SW is very tired. He's completely drained, and Auntie Prema has fallen sick, and he is devoted to the care of Prema. So he spends a lot of sleepless nights looking after Prema. And Tissa, their dear nephew, he comes in every day, but he doesn't stay back and look after Prema. Finally, what happens is Para comes and he starts being there in the morning so that SW can take some rest. Soon after that, SW finds a job for Para as a tram car conductor in Bousted Tramways. So, with this, we come to the end of chapter 5.